Hello and a very warm welcome to you. You're watching Africa News. Here are our headlines. Within 60 days, the UN Ebola mission says it wants to see significant progress in the fight against the deadly disease. This as NGOs turn the spotlight on children who are being abandoned because of the virus. The corruption trial of South African politician Julius Malema is postponed by the courts by almost a year, citing the non-availability of a defence lawyer for one of his co-accused. And the highest ever game of cricket saw international players puffing it out on top of Kilimanjaro. At an altitude of 5,730 metres, they only had half the oxygen available as when on the ground. Well, we're going to start with that Ebola virus, and a UN team dedicated to the fight against the disease is in Ghana, determined to turn the tide on the spread of the virus. Holding its first meeting this Tuesday, UNMIR, as the team is named, says it hopes to see 70% of Ebola cases receiving immediate treatment within the next 2 months. Katerina Vitozzi was at the meeting and brings us the details.
During a press conference in the building behind me, the head of the UN's newly minted Ebola Emergency Response Mission broadly outlined a plan of action to contain the further spread of the Ebola virus. Now, Tony Banbury arrived in Ghana with a small team of experts. This will be the HQ of the UNMIR mission. There'll be around 100 people, staff, in Accra. The bulk of the mission, however, will be based in the worst affected countries, Liberia, Guinea and Sierra Leone. Now, it is still early days and the implementation of this plan is yet to be decided. However, the UNMIR is working to a timeline.
What the WHO says is that 70% of infected people need to be under treatment, and 70% of burials need to be done in a safe way in order to turn this around. And they say we need to do it in 60 days. To accomplish that in 60 days, that means within 30 days, we need to put in place almost all the material resources and capabilities necessary. The treatment centers, the supply lines, the trained healthcare workers at the national level. It's an extremely ambitious target. And the only way it can be achieved will be through this international effort.
To consolidate a plan, the UNMIR chief will head on Wednesday to Liberia, then on to Guinea and Sierra Leone. There he'll meet with local government and local NGOs and the people on the ground who have been battling this disease for the past 6 months. It's after that consultation, it's hoped there'll be a concrete plan that UNMIR will be able to implement, and it'll know what resources these countries need, when and where they need to go.
Well, as countries continue to struggle to find a way of stopping the spread and indeed providing care to those infected, NGOs say that children are not just getting infected but are also being stigmatized and discriminated against because of the disease. An estimated 3,700 kids have lost a parent to the Ebola virus. Well, we're now joined by Dr. Uni Krishnan, Head of Disaster Preparedness and Response for the NGO Plan International. Dr. Krishnan, thank you so much for joining us. Now, your NGO focuses on children. I believe you've seen how many young people are being abandoned by family and loved ones. Can you tell us why and if it affects a large number of children?
Absolutely. Plan International focuses on children. However, our response to the Ebola outbreak in Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia is not just focusing on children, but also others. But at the same time, what we have seen in these 3 countries, children are disproportionately affected because of this crisis. And they have been very badly hit, and they are the invisible victims of this crisis.
Now, Liberia is one of the worst hit countries after its civil war that ended in 2003. There's a lot of one-parent families. From what we're hearing, that means that a lot of kids are actually left without parents if their parents have got the Ebola virus, and that really they're being abandoned. Is this the case?
You're absolutely right. Children are usually affected badly in any crisis, but in Ebola they are doubly impacted. And Plan works in a community just outside Monrovia, and this is a community, Boma, where there are large number of single mothers who have been there like that because of the after effects of the war. And then what has happened is that such parents, single parents, have been becoming victims of Ebola, leaving large number of children as orphans. For example, in Burma, we are aware of one mother, 44-year young person. She died. She had 4 children. Now, the future of her children, 4 of them, are uncertain. They don't not have enough food to eat. The food prices have been going up. They have been psychologically affected. They are actually traumatized because they have seen their own mother dying, plus their friends dying in front of their eyes. Plus, schools have been shut down for a very long time. So otherwise, schools are good coping mechanisms for children. So activities which children would do otherwise normally on a day-to-day basis is impossible now, because the idea to prevent the spread of the disease instructs and encourages not to bring children together, which is very much needed to stop the spread of the disease. But at the same time, this is taking a heavy toll on children.
Okay, Dr. Krishnan, unfortunately we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you indeed for joining us and bringing us that insight. Dr. Krishnan there of Plan International. The accused politician says he wants the trial to go ahead, but South African courts have decided to postpone a corruption case against Julius Malema by almost a year. The reason? The lack of a lawyer for one of his co-accused. The charges are fraud, money laundering and racketeering, as Phoebe Lancer-Wood explains.
A sea of supporters rallying for their hero. South African politician Julius Malema on Tuesday found out that the corruption trial he is facing has been postponed. Addressing the masses gathered outside the courthouse, Malema denounced his critics.
Once you disagree with them politically, they say you are an enemy. And therefore, they use the state power to try and silence you. They tried for many years. With some of us, they couldn't succeed. And they are not going to succeed.
Malema is facing charges of fraud, corruption and money laundering. He is accused of embezzling more than €3.5 million, including money intended for road construction in his home province of Limpopo. After being expelled from the ruling African National Congress in 2012, Malema founded his own party known as the Economic Freedom Fighters. His aim? To challenge President Zuma. Malema became an MP in May and has gained notoriety for heckling and provoking his counterpart while Parliament has been in session. The trial is now scheduled for August 2015 and is expected to last a month. It brings into sharp focus the drive against corruption in South African politics.
In Mali, the UN says it's worried about the resurgence of jihadists in the north of the country. Over the last few weeks, 10 Chadian peacekeepers were killed there, while France 24's Nicolas Germain met with Malian Prime Minister Mara Moussa, who gave us this reaction to the current unrest.
We hope that there will be an agreement before the end of the year, thanks to the peace talks in Algiers, and that this will enable to distinguish between the armed groups that are political and the armed groups that are just terrorists. More generally, we have groups operating in a range that goes from Egypt to southern Tunisia, southern Libya, that covers Niger, northern Nigeria and northern Mali. They don't respect borders. Therefore, you need a global response. We need the United Nations, we need the international community to be more involved.
Well, finally, they may be fit, but just a few short runs had a group of cricketers out of breath as they held the highest ever match on top of Tanzania's Mount Kilimanjaro. A game set at an altitude of 5,730 metres provided players with only half the amount of oxygen available at sea level. So even for the fittest, it was a challenge. Well, the aim of the game was not just for fun. They were also raising money for cancer research and indeed funds to build Rwanda's first international cricket pitch, as the game there is really taking off. Well, that brings us to the end of Africa News and indeed this hour of Live from Paris.